Do you know Kyrgyzstan? Do you know Kyrgyzstan? Sometimes my students ask me questions like that down in the comments. They say, hey, Mark, do you know Libya? Do you know Azerbaijan? Do you know, all these different countries? Well, actually, that's the wrong question. You should not say, do you know Kyrgyzstan? I'll teach you the right question to ask in this lesson. So smash like. Okay, so the question you should ask is, have you ever heard of Kyrgyzstan? Have you ever heard of Kyrgyzstan? Or you could ask, do you know anything about Kyrgyzstan? Do you know anything about Kyrgyzstan? Okay, so actually those two things are kind of different ideas. Okay, so when people ask me, hey Mark, do you know Kyrgyzstan? I'm not sure which question they're asking me. Okay, one question is, have you ever heard of Kyrgyzstan? The other question is, do you know anything about Kyrgyzstan? Okay, so with this one, we're talking about the existence of the country, right? Do I know the country exists? Okay, well, whereas with this one, we're sort of assuming that I know the country exists, but the question is, do I know any information about it? Do I know anything sort of about the country? Okay, so one thing is existence, the other thing is information. Okay, so depending on what you want to ask, the question will be different, right? Have you ever heard of my country? Do you know anything about my country? Okay, so those two things. Now, I think when people are asking me that, I think most of the time they mean this. Hey, Mark, do you even know there's a country in the world called Kyrgyzstan? Do you even know it exists? Right? Which is a good question, right? Because, I mean, probably most people in the US, Canada, Australia, Europe, they probably don't know that there's a country in the world called Kyrgyzstan. Okay, so it's a very fair question to ask. So then you should ask that question. Hey, Mark, have you ever heard of a country, my country, called Kyrgyzstan? Have you ever heard of it? Right? Now, after you ask that question, then you could ask other questions. But if you just want to know whether I know it exists, then you can ask that question. Hey, Mark, do you even know my country exists? Now, in my case, I do know about every country. I do know every country in the world. I have heard the name, right? There's only about 200 countries in the world. I have heard of all the countries. Okay, there's no country in the world that I have not heard of because I'm interested in geography, right? Sometimes I just look at a map and I scroll around looking at different countries and thinking, hey, that would be cool to go to that place or that place. Okay, so I've heard of every country in the world. I know it exists. But that doesn't mean I know anything about it. That doesn't mean I'd be able to put it on a map. For most countries, I don't know, for a lot of countries, let's say in Africa, for example, if you were to ask me, hey, Mark, have you ever heard of Togo? I would say, yeah, I've heard of Togo. And then you could ask me another question. You could say, do you know anything about Togo? And I would say, I don't think so. To be honest, I don't know much about it. I think I know the area in Africa. I might be able to put it on a map, but I might not be. I might get it mixed up with, with one of the other countries. Okay, so I know it. I know its existence, right? So if you ask me that, hey, have you ever heard of Togo? I would say yes. Okay, but then you could ask a follow-up question, right? A follow-up question means another question, or maybe more than one follow-up question. And you could say, do you know anything about Togo? And I would say, to be honest, I don't know very much, okay? Then you could ask me, are you familiar with Togolese culture? Hey, Mark, are you familiar with Togo's culture? I think the word is Togolese. Are you familiar with Togolese culture? I could say, no, I don't know anything about. That would be my honest answer, right? I don't know anything about it. Or you could ask me, hey, have you ever tried Togolese food? Okay, and then I would say no, okay, because I don't have any experience with Togo. With some countries, I have experience. With other countries, I don't know anything about them. I don't know what kind of people live there. I don't know what their food is like. I don't know what their culture is like. Okay, so probably for most of the countries in the world, I probably have no idea, right? But that's a different idea than about the existence of the country. I know it exists, right? I know Togo exists, but then you can ask these other questions if you want to know sort of what my level of knowledge is about the country. Okay, so just remember those two different questions. Okay, have you ever heard of Togo? Do you know anything about Togo? And then you can ask the follow-up questions. Like I said, are you familiar with? That's a good way to say. Are you familiar with our culture? Are you familiar with the people? Have you ever met any people from Togo? Have you ever tried any Togolese food? Okay, so you can ask a lot of follow-up questions to sort of get an idea of what my level of knowledge is. If I don't have very much knowledge, you can teach me. That'd be great. That's what friends are for, right? Hey, if you're from Togo or you're from Kyrgyzstan or from Libya or something, let me know about your country down in the comments. I'd love to know more. There are a lot of countries in the world, and maybe one day I can travel around and visit all of them, but that's probably unlikely. I'll probably never get to North Korea, but who knows? There's always a chance. Okay, so we use the word know when we're talking about a person, right? Like, I know John. Hey, do you know John? Yeah, John's my friend. I know him, right? But we can't say that about countries, okay? You can't say, do you know Azerbaijan? No, you can't say that, okay? So with people, you can, or with languages, you can. Okay, so I could say, hey, do you know Spanish? Do you know Spanish? That means, do you speak Spanish, right? You could say, yes, I know Spanish, or yes, I speak Spanish. Okay, so we can use the word know for that too. Now, if you're talking about a person who is dead, a person in history, for example, I could ask you, hey, do you know who Adam Smith was? Do you know who Adam Smith was? Okay, that means I'm talking about a person in the past who has died. Okay, now if I want to ask about a person who's living, okay, like let's say David Beckham, for example, right? David Beckham is still alive. You could say, hey, do you know who David Beckham is? Do you know who David Beckham is? Okay, now when we talk about ideas or theories, then a good one to use is, are you familiar with? Hey, are you familiar with that theory? Okay, are you familiar with Jordan Peterson's ideas? Okay, I'm not asking you, do you know the person? I'm saying, are you familiar with his ideas? Okay, are you familiar with the I don't know, the theory of relativity? Okay, are you familiar with Einstein's theory of relativity? Okay, so then you would use, are you familiar with? That would probably be the best one. Now, you could also say, do you know anything about? Okay, do you know anything about astronomy? Do you know anything about Karl Marx? Okay, so there are different ways to ask questions in English. There's not just one way, but I'm just trying to give you some ideas about the best way you can ask a question to really communicate what you mean, right? Like I said at the beginning, when my students ask me, hey, do you know Kyrgyzstan, right? It's a bit confusing for me because I don't know what they're actually asking. I don't know if they're asking about the existence or whether I know any information about it, right? So that's why it's important when you're asking questions that the question is the best one for that situation. Okay, now when you're talking about a thing, let's say like like cameras or like laptops or something, you could say, do you know anything about cameras? Hey, I'm having trouble with my cell phone. Do you know anything about cell phones? Do you know anything about laptops? Do you know anything about technology? Okay, so if you just want to get a person's general, understanding about a certain thing, do you know anything about cooking? I don't know anything about cooking. Do you know anything about cooking? Right? So there, like I said, there are different ways you can ask questions, but the main thing I wanted to talk about in this lesson is that common mistake of when you're talking about a country, okay? When you say, do you know Libya? No, that's wrong. Remember, if you want to know whether the person is aware of its existence, then you should ask, hey, have you ever heard of Libya? Okay, and if you want to know their sort of their knowledge, their level of knowledge or information about the country, then you can ask, do you know anything about Libya? Hey, hope you guys find that helpful. Those are some questions you can ask someone, if you're having a conversation and you just heard a loud bang. I think someone slammed the gate to this building. I'm staying in an Airbnb and there's a gate, and I think someone slammed the gate. So anyway, hope you guys find that helpful. Loud people in the hall. This is awkward. I hate making videos when there's loud noises everywhere. So anyway, I better end this video soon before a bomb goes off all of a sudden. With my luck, probably get bombed here. Anyway, so hope you guys are having a great day. Hope these questions are helpful for you when you're, dialoguing with someone. It's good to ask questions, right? Hey, where are you from? Hey, do you know anything about my country? Have you ever heard of my country? Those are all great questions. So just remember these questions and try to ask them next time you have a conversation with someone about your country. Well, have a great day, guys, and I'll end this video before something else bad happens. All right, see you later in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.